everybody. It's Monday Night Football on the Sports Exchange. No, I am anything but Howard Cosell. The guy stinks. Sorry, Howard fans. But Monday Night Football is a brand, and we got it tonight. And we are happy to be joined by Coach John Bonamego, a man who's been well-traveled. Jeremy B's wearing the Lions cap, so you know he made a stop there. And, Coach, welcome to the broadcast, and we're looking forward to having you on. Certainly a lot more times, though, but this is a good first act for us to go out there and talk a lot of football. Just, you know, folks, traveling man John Bonamego, before I go to you, Coach, okay, I want to let everybody know that the audio version of the Sports Exchange can be heard on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you get your podcast. Please hit the red subscribe button on YouTube South Florida Tribune. We're striving for 1,000 subscribers. Please also comment, like, and share the broadcast. Want to be a guest and topic ideas at southfloridatribune@gmail.com, or you can participate in the chat room. If you want to contact me, you can also contact me at Twitter at Tribune South. If you want to advertise cost efficiently, call me at 954-304-4941. And in the eyes of Brent Musburger, we are live on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. So, well, I guess, Coach, a little bit more of a lively introduction here. Keep you going, keep us all going. Welcome to the Sports Exchange, Coach, and looking forward to having you more. But great first act for us.
Great to be here, Scotty. Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
It's our pleasure as well. All right, George Eichhorn, this guy, like and I, Coach, we've been working together over 43 years. So what's another few more, right, George?
So looking forward to it. Looking forward to talking to Coach, too. Great program we got.
And last but not least, Smoking Jeremy B, who's been on both ends of the doubleheader. And yes, he was permitted to wear the Lions cap tonight because I have to make sure that in some particular cases I bend the rules a little bit, and he gets to do it on these particular broadcasts, Jeremy.
I appreciate it, and I'm happy to be here.
All right, well, your first project here is to talk about Will Vogel's comments, so go ahead, Jeremy.
He goes, first off, thank you for answering my question. You played wide receiver and quarterback at Central Michigan. What propelled you to coach special teams, and what do you like about it the most?
I would say it was kind of luck of the draw in terms of what propelled me to it. And what kept me there is, one of those deals when you find something that you enjoy and, when other people think you're good at it, they're going to keep you there. But I think the thing that I enjoyed most about coaching special teams was it allowed me to work with the entire team. And in fact, other than the head coach, the special teams coach is probably the only coach on the staff that speaks to the entire team every single day. So in that regard, it really did a lot in preparing me, for that opportunity to be a head coach.
Now, I got to say one thing about Coach. Him and I are actually Kennedy babies. He was born in 1963 in August. It looks like, I was born December of 62. So, Coach, you and I, there aren't many of us John F. Kennedy babies. I don't talk politics, but it's okay to mention John F. Kennedy, knowing that we're both a rare breed here. What can I tell you? All right, well, let's start from the beginning, okay? But before I do, I want to, I'm so inspired by you because you're a cancer survivor, and obviously you had a situation in your tonsils, and you caught it earlier, and it was very treatable. We're going to certainly talk about this on another show, so I just want to congratulate you for being a cancer survivor once again on another edition of No Limits. We'll tell your story.
Thank you, Scotty. Like we've talked about off the air, I mean, it's there's a lot to that, and to do it justice, probably it does require some time, but I really appreciate you recognizing that. And I mean, I'm sure we all know somebody that's been through that, or maybe you have a family member, even people out there that are listening. I would say, without going too much into depth, is remember that those people have families and they need your prayers and support as well. For me, in my case, I was in a very public position, and man, the outpouring of the support came from all directions. But I will tell you that, having a wife and young kids at the time, if there's somebody that's close to you, don't forget about those people as well, because they need your prayer and support as well.
Well, again, we're going to devote an entire show to it, but while I'm actually talking about it, on May 11th marked the 50th year that my grandpa, Sidney Morganroth, died of lung cancer. And I vowed to never smoke when he died, and 50 years later, I never have. So what can I tell you? I could find other adventurous ways to get into trouble, but it wasn't going to be that way. So, well, we're going to get your question about Gleason in a little bit, but we'll mention it. But I want to make sure we stay on track here, Will. So we'll keep that on there. And when we get to the New Orleans Saint stop, we're going to insert it and keep on track. With that said, I used to drive by this place an awful lot, but mine alive. I-94 Paw Paw High School in Michigan. You graduated. Tell me a little bit about Paw Paw.
Well, I was an Army brat, so I kind of went to school. We moved all over the place, but my dad was from Lawrence, Michigan. And so before my junior year in high school, we were actually stationed in Vicenza, Italy. And, so my freshman and sophomore year, we were playing in like the Department of Defense school system. And I think my dad had enough vision to know that, at that point in time, I was a big fish in a small pond. And, back in those days, if, it was before the internet, right? I mean, there was no huddle. I mean, I remember our high school games were filmed on 16 millimeter film. And so if you were going to be recruited, you had to be someplace where those college recruiters were going to get a chance to see you, watch you play, or come into school to watch that one copy of the game film that the head coach had locked up under, it wasn't going to leave the building. And so it was a lot different time. And I was grateful that my parents trusted me, grateful to a lot of people that they kind of took me in and gave me a place to stay. And, I didn't realize at the time, but it really was a big step forward in terms of my independence, in terms of being able to, handle the moving, which was to come. So
I can only imagine. Boy, you segue into this really nicely.
Now, I also say, we had I had three high school coaches at Paw Paw that all played major college football. Don Moorhead was my head coach, and he was actually Bo Schembechler's first quarterback at Michigan. Went to the Rose Bowl in, I think, 1967. Kim Rokamp, who was an All-American at Michigan State, and then Rick Smith, who was an All-MAC player at Western Michigan. So that was one of the reasons of, it was an attractive situation for me. Was the staff was so experienced, and they were all former college football players.
All right, so I got an interesting thing here while we're on the traveling thing. We're going to be on that all night anyways. You lived in 8 zip codes in Italy and Ethiopia before you turned 18. I got to hear this one. So do they.
Yeah, I mean, again, just dad being military. We could probably do another story about this, but like my dad was, graduated from high school, enlisted straight into the military. And the first place he's stationed is Asmara, Ethiopia in Africa. There was an Italian colony there. He was, I think, 19 or 20. My mom was 18. She didn't speak English. He didn't speak Italian, but somehow or another they ended up together. And, mom had me when she was 19, and, they were married, and, the rest is history. But from there, I don't know. We came back to the United States. I remember Washington. I can remember Washington, D.C., North Carolina, 2 tours in Kansas, 2 tours in Georgia, and then Germany, Italy, Michigan while my dad was in Vietnam. Those are all the only ones I remember off the top of my head.
Okay. Will Vogel alluded to this a little, but he already talked about you playing wide receiver and quarterback over at Central. But the reality is you also graduated in health and fitness back in 1987. So while you were playing quarterback, how important was it to have a degree like that in health and fitness while you were playing, so you have a better appreciation of conditioning and so forth?
Honestly, I mean, I think it was great, but truthfully, I mean, I had no idea what I wanted to study when I went to college. I knew I wanted to play college football, and I think I don't want to minimize the education that I received, because
Right.
it means a lot to me. But at that time, I was, to be honest, brutally honest, I was just trying to stay eligible to play. And I walked on at Central. I didn't have a scholarship. I just, I probably was a Division III athlete that wanted to play Division I, and just walked on and earned a scholarship in my final year.
Nothing wrong with that, Coach. Not at all. I mean, listen, when we go to college, we could probably take on a degree. We never use it anyway. So what's the difference? You certainly, obviously, your history speaks for itself that you were able to use the education and be a part of football. So now this is where it gets really fun for us. We're going to talk about your coaching stops and the frequent flyer miles you have. So I don't have a calculator. Don't ask me to come up with all this stuff. I'm not going to do it. So you can go into as much detail as you want on either long or short, depending on the stop, however you want to do it. Okay. I was in high school. You're in 87. You're an assistant coach. Is that correct?
I was a co-head coach. Prior to that, I mentioned my last place my dad was stationed was Italy. Okay. I went home. I went to Italy for Christmas break. My mom had a very accomplished career in the American Red Cross. One of her volunteers was a head coach for an Italian team. So I took a semester off of school and went to Italy for 6 months and was a player coach for an Italian team in Verona, Italy.
Okay. Verona Redskins, if I remember.
The Verona Redskins. Yep, you got it. And then came back, and I had 8-9 credits left to graduate. So I was the co-head JV coach at Mount Pleasant High School while I was, finishing up my undergrad. So
that sounds good. All right. Well, I'm going to mention these schools, and you tell me the role. You went up to Maine, right?
Yep.
And 88 to 91.
Yes.
Talk about that.
Graduate assistant. Again, 3 head coaches in 3 years. It was Tim Murphy, who's at Harvard now. Tom Lichtenberg came in, and Coach Lichtenberg really gave me a big break because as a second-year graduate assistant, smaller school, but still, great experience. I had the opportunity to I was actually the wide receiver coach, met with the guys, put in the game plan, graded everything, as a second-year graduate assistant. So that was tremendous. And then Coach Lichtenberg left to go to Ohio University, and then fairly well-known guy by the name of Kirkferenz came in as the head coach, and Coach Ferentz actually hired me to my first full-time position.
Really? No kidding. That's pretty good.
And so I was wide receivers and special teams.
Okay. All right. Lehigh, 1992.
Yep. Running backs and special teams.
Okay. That's fair enough. Army. Boy, that's not an easy gig. Bobby Ross actually coached there, but talk about your Army experience.
Phenomenal. Still keep in touch with a lot of those young men, which are now grown men. A tremendous laboratory, just by virtue of the fact of the number of bodies that you have out at practice. My first year I was on the defensive side of the ball and I did special teams. And then the following year, I really became one of the 9 assistants. The NCAA eliminated the recruiting coordinator role, and our head coach, Coach Bob Sutton, who's also a Michigan man, had the idea of putting me in the recruiting coordinator role and then giving me special teams because, as he put it, I wouldn't be bogged down in staff meetings. I could work independently, and then when I was done with my game planning, I was always available for to work on recruiting, which was, it's a gigantic undertaking anywhere, but at the service academies, again, especially back then, it was a never-ending job. I mean, I think I was in that role for 3 years before I even took any time off in the summertime. Of course, at West Point, the kids show up a little bit before July 4th, and somebody's got to be around. And, you have 100 freshmen, and, I was probably the only one on the staff that knew all of them just because I was a recruiting coordinator and I had dealt with them, in some way, shape, or form, either getting them to the West Point prep or, getting them directly in school. So, man, probably one of my favorites, probably one of my favorite, if not the most favorite stop that I've had, just because the institution, what it represents, and then the young men that you got a chance to work with, and the quality of people, and just knowing what they're, knowing what's ahead of them, when they graduate, and then, beyond their military service. I mean, it was a great honor to have worked at West Point.
Well, you go from West Point to a military town, and I'm all too familiar with this one, the Jacksonville Jaguars. As I look at your bio here, 99 to 2001 year, I believe you're an assistant special teams coach, right?
Yes, I started off as the assistant special teams coach, and then in 2002, when Coach frankganz retired, I became the coordinator. And that whole time I worked for Coach Coughlin, which again, it was a blessing to be able to come in, to be able to come into the NFL in that role, because, I think, the thing that gets young coordinators in the NFL is not the X's and O's. It's all the other stuff. It's how you practice, how you communicate with the players. Remember when I first got the job, on my interview, Coach Coughlin said this to me, and I never forget it. He said, John, he goes, there are a lot more parallels between the NFL and high school football than there are the NFL and college football. Oh. And I really didn't understood what that meant until we got through training camp and then got into the season. And then I'm like, okay, I get it. It's the number of bodies that are out of practice. In college football, you've got, most Division I schools are going to try to carry 120 players. And so your offense and defense, you practice separately. The offense is on one end, the defense is on the other. You have your show team, your scout teams, right, and you rarely come together unless it's for like a couple periods during the practice. Well, in the NFL, it's like high school. You have offensive periods, then you flip over and you have a defensive period. Mm-hmm. And those offensive players, there's only 8 practice squad guys. Some of those frontline players are going to have to jump in and give reps as a show team for whatever, except for your star players, everybody's, expected to contribute. And so that's kind of what he meant really, was the numbers and how you manage the numbers on the roster.
So you like this stop here, goes from Jacksonville to Green Bay. My goodness. I think you probably invested some long johns right there. And weren't you the
I neglected to mention that the very best thing that came out of Jacksonville was I met my wife, Paulette.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
We're still, going strong. And when we met, she said, I'll go wherever you want, but please try to keep me where, she was born and raised in Florida. She said, try to keep me where it's warm. And for God's sake, don't take me to Green Bay. And,
lo and behold,
that's kind of how it's worked. Anytime she says, gosh, I hope we don't end up there, or those poor people there, it's like ends up where we're going. Because the next stop was, from Green Bay was New Orleans. And I remember watching, Hurricane Katrina and all the devastation. Right. And Paulette saying, those poor people, gosh, it must be awful. Man, I'd hate to, I'm glad we're not there. And then, 6 months after Katrina hit, we were in New Orleans with Coach Sean Payton.
All right, so let's back up a little bit here. You really you had a move here better than Barry Sanders, the way you dodged the screen base stop with your other half. So what was your reaction? And I'm putting you and Barry Sanders, coach, in the same sentence this time. You were right there. That was I don't know, what do they call that? A jackknife or whatever, Swiss Army knife move. I don't know what they call this stuff. I don't even care. So what was your wife's reaction when you ended up going to, no, I'm not going
to. Surprisingly, I mean, maybe not surprisingly, if you met Paulette, she loved it. I mean, she did, because, gosh, she grew up going to football games and at the Swamp. She's a ball chick. She knows more about football probably before she met me than a lot of men do. And so, once she got up there, she was good. And our daughter was born. So, I mean, she was pregnant half the time we were there. So that helps, that helps.
Are you telling me that your daughter is a Wisconsin girl?
Yeah. She was born in Green Bay. Yep.
Wow, that is interesting. Okay.
Two boys born in our sons are both born in Jacksonville, and our daughter's born. She's the cheesehead. She's born in Green Bay.
All right, well, that's okay. Now we can tie this thing into New Orleans. We're getting some activity in the chat room. And now it's time to insert a Will Vogel comment. And this is one that I like to, and I've been in New Orleans after Katrina, but go ahead, Jeremy.
I remember when you called the play that became the infamous block punt that Gleason blocked against the Falcons after Hurricane Katrina.
Yeah, that was a pretty special night. Just the energy in the stadium. I mean, I think there were two Bonos in the house. There was the U2 Bono, and then like I say, the Me Too Bono, which is me. Gosh, I mean, that atmosphere was probably as close to a Super Bowl as you can get in the regular season. It was a Monday night game. Both teams were still undefeated. It's a rivalry game with Atlanta, and it was the reopening of the Superdome. And I think the significance of that play for the people of New Orleans, I mean, they built a statue of Steve Gleason that sits out there. It's titled The Rebirth. And so I think that says about all that needs to be said. But I mean, Steve made a great play. It happened almost exactly the way we drew it up, which is something that rarely happens. But yeah, that was, I think the coolest thing was the Monday Night Crew in the booth. They just stopped talking. After they called the play, they just stopped talking. And I mean, you watch the replays of it, the cameras are panning around to the fans. And it was like all of that emotion from everything that had transpired in the previous year kind of just exploded in 1 3-second play. That's about what it was like. But it was pretty, again, I would say that's probably the most memorable moment of my career.
Okay, so in between your New Orleans stops, you did have your wife got her ability to go to Florida, but this time my neck was South Florida. What about the Miami Dolphins? How would you describe your tenure?
Great, great football franchise. That we were there. Got a chance to work closely and be around Coach Parcells. Learned a lot. And finished kind of rocky, got run out of town, but that's just the breaks of the game. I mean, sometimes you're going to have bad games as a coach, you're going to have bad games as a player, you're going to have bad days in whatever job you do, and it's not that's not where you measure yourself. It's what do you do after that, and what is how you measure yourself.
All right, so we have a question in the chat room, Jeremy, coming from Bo.
All right, what do you guys think of the Thursday night football flex schedule getting approved for this season? After what happened last year, if you're asking me, they had to do something, or Jeff Bezos might have said, I reject this contract. You can find somebody else to cover it.
All right. What's your thought, Coach?
Well, I always look at it from the standpoint of the players. I think those Thursday night games, as popular as they are, and as much as a fan as I like to watch them, that's a really tough turnaround for the players to play on Sunday and then come back on Thursday night. Flexing them, that'll be interesting because I think mentally, it's going to be interesting, and I hope that they give them at least a week in advance so that they can be prepared, because when you do those things, your routine's going to be different, and that's the only thing. I think it's great for the fans. My concern would be for the players and recovery time and preparation time and all those things.
Great question, Bo. Really, that was an excellent question.
Yeah, very
George,
good.
any thoughts about this one, George?
I'm against it, and Coach, I got to disagree with you. It is a slap in the face to the fans. Fans plan their trips to the stadium with their families. They rent hotel rooms. They rent campgrounds. They plan it out, and then the NFL comes along with the big mighty television sword and says, "Oh, sorry." I mean, I agree with you. They are going to give them notice. I think they said as much as 18 days notice, 15 days. I read something today, but I don't like them. I don't like them at all, and I never will. I'm sorry. Thanksgiving Day, I'll give you that. That's a holiday. That's a tradition. But and the players too. I agree with you, Coach. I mean, it's hard for the staff and hard for the players and the training staff to get everybody ready. But like I said, my overriding thing is you're really, really disrupting the fans.
Well, yes, if you flex it, right, and change, are they saying you were going to play on Sunday and now you're playing Thursday?
Right, they're moving it up 3 days, right?
Yeah, that's going to be.
It's
really
actually
hard.
4 weeks notice they give when they're going to flex it, according to Bo.
4 weeks, okay. Well, that's
28
even better.
days. Because at 28 days, you usually don't get a cancellation fee. If it's within 10 days, you do. So I get it.
I mean, the only thing I'll add to it is NFL players are a creature of habit. That's all I can say. And Coach, you know that everybody, they're all in a routine, right? So they expect certain things to be a certain way.
When you play a Thursday game, you're not practicing that week. You don't. I mean, they're going to be walkthroughs.
Walkthroughs and a lot of video.
Yeah, walkthroughs, as much video as you can, and you're trying to carry as much from the game plan from the previous week into that second week, just because you won't have time to install.
All right, so let's go back to your second tenure in New Orleans. Obviously, at that point, it's 2011, and Vogel makes yet another interesting point that play needs to go to Canton if it's not there. Yeah, I mean, and let's not forget it's ALS. Lou Gehrig's disease. So, tell me what it was like in 2011 playing for, being a part of something like that.
That was it was great to be back. It was awfully, I needed a lifeline, and Sean Payton gave me a lifeline. And, it's funny because I was a coordinator there, and Greg McMahon is a good friend of mine, was my assistant. And then in 2011, I came back and we just reversed roles. He was the coordinator and I was his assistant. And, one of the things that I got to do was take Steve Gleason. And, when we went to that final playoff game in San Francisco, which was, that might have been the most physical game that I've ever been associated with. I mean, that game was insanely physical. But I took Steve and I got him on the plane and got him off the plane and turned him over to his brother. And then after the game, got him from his brother, got him on the plane, and got him back off the plane when we got back to New Orleans, and turned him over to his wife, Michelle. So I am a big believer in providence, and I think that God puts us in the places where He wants us, where He needs us, and I think that I was supposed to be back there for those reasons. And it was a great year. It was tough because my family stayed in Florida, so we kind of we commuted that year, but there's a lot of good memories from that season.
Are you still in touch with Steve Gleason a lot?
Yeah, I mean, periodically I check in on him. It's a little bit easier to communicate with other people that are closer to him, because I mean, for him to communicate now, it's all via text message, and he's still plugging away. I mean, he's doing well.
Good. All right, well, let's go back to Jacksonville. You had another tenure there. This time you were with Mike Malarkey.
Yep. That was a rough year.
Yeah, I actually covered. Well, I believe that we'll keep that one of your shorter comments. I believe that you won just a couple of games, right?
Yeah, I think we won. I think we won 2 or 3. I can't remember.
Yeah, I believe. Yeah, but you obviously work with my good buddy Dan Edwards. Dan Edwards is certainly one of the nicest guys you could ever really.
One of the best in the business, right there.
Yeah, he's a guy that I think so much of. Good friend of mine. I'm looking forward to seeing him in the chair. All right. Now, Mr. Ballrake has a Detroit Lions hat on there. And now we take our way back to the Midwest. You're with the Lions from 13 to 14. Tell us a little bit about that.
Tremendous. It was great to be back in Michigan. Jim Schwartz and Coach Caldwell were both outstanding to me. That team in the first year in Detroit, I mean, we were loaded. We were, we might not have been a great team, but we were a really good special teams outfit. The next year we lost a couple guys, not as good, but those were really 2 really fun years. Always appreciated the Lions, but maybe not so much until after I worked there. The Ford family and what they put into that franchise, I mean, they really don't get enough credit. I think they don't. I mean, as fans, when we expect a lot, as we should, but I really think the Fords go. It's just, I'll say this: I've worked in a lot of great organizations. None were better than the Detroit Lions in terms of a work environment. Having all of the things at your disposal to help you do your job to the very best of your ability, and knowing that you had 100% support by ownership, and just doing everything in a first-class manner. I mean, there isn't anybody in my mind that has done a better job than the Detroit Lions.
Okay, Jeremy, go to the chat.
Dom DeRubis, one of our Detroit buddies, says, question for John: who was the best kick returner you ever coached?
Darrensproles.
I'm sitting there, I'm going, well, I'm looking at the years, and I think he just missed out on Stefan Logan.
Yeah.
So it had to be Darrensproles at that point when I'm looking through those list of teams.
Yeah.
Yeah, great question, Dom. That's a really good one. I like that.
Now, if you'd have been Chicago in the late 2000s, you could have said Devin Hester.
But you had to play against, you had to coach against him, twice a year. I mean, it was like,
right.
I'll tell you what, I used to watch Darrensproles.
So did everybody else.
What's that, Coach?
So did everybody else, including the officials. That's why, not taking a thing away from him or anything they did, but they benefited maybe from 1 or 2 missed calls, just because human nature. I mean, the guy is a freak. I mean, he really was. You talk about a scary dude. It's like you don't want to put the ball anywhere near him. I mean, it's only a matter of time. If he touches it too many times, he's going to hurt you, because he's just that dominant of a player.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, Don DeRubis brings up another interesting point that Jeremy just touched on. Melgray and Devin Hester, they were
over Devin. He's saying Melgray over Devin Hester.
Melgray.
He goes, yeah, I said it. He was great.
Yeah, I like Melgray.
Melgray's kind of the guy Melgray was probably the first guy that was like, became known for that, right? I mean, I don't like rankings,
I don't rank them either. I don't know, but
I think they're both guys that are, they're both Hall of Fame caliber players for certain.
So, all right. Well, I'll tell you what, Coach, we're going to keep the chat room going, then we'll keep your stops rolling at the same time. All right, we'll go back to Will Vogel. So I love about an active chat room. It means I'll never lose my voice during the course of the show. All right, go ahead, Jeremy.
Are you close with anyone who's still in the NFL, player or coach? Considering he just coached 2 years ago, I'm quite sure he is.
Thousands.
Right. I'm looking at this list and I was like,
it's one of the reasons. It's one of the reasons that BSN hired me. I think is because of my network. So, and ultimately, I'm kind of mad at myself. I didn't make this point earlier, but I know when we were talking the other day, I said it. But it's really not about the places so much as it is the people that are there, right? I mean, it's the individuals, the coaches, and the players that are in the hallways every day. That's what makes a place special. It's not really the colors or the logo on the helmet. It's the people. And I was just very, very fortunate. I've been very fortunate that I got an opportunity to work with and around a lot of great people. I think one of my pet peeves is that a lot of people tend to characterize stereotype professional athletes. And I mean, we do, there's some a-holes for sure, but the majority of the guys that I've worked with have, they want to get better. They want to be, the game's important to them. They want to learn that, they're professionals, or they want to learn to be a professional. And again, the overwhelming majority of the guys are awesome guys. And every profession's going to have, one or two bad apples here and there. But unfortunately, in our society, we would rather put the guys that screw up and do dumb things. We want to put them on a pedestal, or, because it's more interesting to talk about that than to talk about the 20 other guys that are, doing everything right and have foundations and have charities and are, doing things to try to help people.
All right, so I've got to answer this one here. And so you guys take it for what it's worth at face value. All right. Duncan Lozinski, how can you guys be talking about football at a time like this with the Panthers in the Eastern Conference Finals? Duncan, I'm putting it up here because you know what? I have a responsibility to realize that I know where your allegiances are. So what I'm going to do, Duncan, with this comment is I'm going to ask you to be our crack update person about the Florida Panthers, and you're more than welcome to give us updates so that we can count you as the guy that's leading breaking news about the Florida Panthers and the Carolina Hurricanes. So with that said, Duncan, the next thing I should hear from you in the chat room is a score, and we might even comment on it. But thanks a lot for, hey, listen, you're tuning in. We can't be that bad, right? You're watching the Panthers and watching us. So we'll just take that, Duncan, as a very nice compliment. Thank you very much. So there you go. Well, Joshua Bernstein says 1-0 Cats, but Duncan will still make you our crack guy anyway. So, all right. So let's continue on as the victory tour for Coach Bono continues. You went up to Central Michigan. You were their head coach, 15-18. And obviously, you had 4 teams. I know your last year was a little rough, but talk about your entire experience over at CMU.
I mean, very gratifying for the most part. I think it was a goal of mine to be a head coach. Specifically, I had, it was kind of like the dream job for me. And if it had gone according to plan, I'd still be there. I mean, I had a tremendous amount of love for the institution and the football program there. Inherited a pretty good team. Went to 3 bowl games. The first 3 years, and in the last year we were just a really young team. But I've been asked, am I bitter, for being let go? And the answer is no. I mean, when you get into this profession, you understand what the pitfalls are. What's what the risks are, and you have to win. And if you don't win enough, then you're probably going to lose your job. And I think we were 1-11 that last year, and that's simply not good enough. Even though we were young, and there's a lot of things that contributed to that, but the bottom line is, it wasn't acceptable, and it wasn't acceptable to me or anybody that's a fan of the program. And they deserve better. Do I think I should have gotten fired? No. Is it justifiable? Absolutely. Because I didn't win enough games that year. Wished I would have had an opportunity to redeem myself with one more year, but the powers that be didn't grant that. And so we hold our head high, we march forward, and I'm proud of what we did. I'm proud of the things that we did accomplish there. We brought we had a share of the MAC championship in the first year. We brought the Michigan MAC trophy back to Mount Pleasant in 2017, which it had been 10 years since that had happened. So there was a lot of positives, and got to see a lot of young men graduate. They're doing well, and there's a few players that we coached that are still playing and making a living out of it. And so I look back at it as mostly positive and really no regret.
All right. Well, you stayed in the state for another year with the Lions in 2019. What's your thought? Good year. Learned a lot. Again, tough year record wise. I mean, at any level, when you lose your quarterback, it's going to be a rough. You're going to have a hard time. Right.
In the NFL, I mean, I don't know how many guys we played that year, but there was only one of them that was named Matt Stafford, and it just puts so much more pressure on every other part of the team. When you don't have your ace in that position, and there was a big bloodletting after that year, and so I had to go find work again. Okay.
And obviously your work went to Southern California, where you were with the Rams in 2020 and 2021. And yes, you did get a Super Bowl ring while you stayed around and gutted it out all this long. So let's just talk about the time you spent with the Rams.
First year of COVID, man, what a challenge, but we still managed to make it in the playoffs. The following year took a different role, like senior coaching assistant.
Right.
Again, good year, had a chance to actually, be in Florida working remotely that season, which was a huge bonus.
Right.
Missed being at the games and everything, but it was still, still able to get my work done and meet remotely with the QC, quality control guys, and do whatever projects they asked me to do. And it was, would have been a little bit more fun to have actually been there every day if we'd have known we were going to win the Super Bowl. But when I had that chance to move back to Florida and not have to pay whatever 16% income tax in California, it was like getting a raise, like getting a big raise. So I'm glad. Was happy that we did it, and my family was very happy that we did it.
Yeah, to the tune of 16%. I didn't realize it was that high out in LA.
Oh,
Everybody talks about Southern Cal. I understand. I love going there, but sure, I know it's expensive to live there. And your last stop, obviously, was Iowa State. You were there briefly, and then obviously you chose to retire.
Yep.
Let's think about that.
Had a blast up in Ames last year. I mean, Matt Campbell does a phenomenal job. He's a good friend. His last year at Toledo before he went to Iowa State was my first year at Central. So we got a chance to meet each other and just had a lot of mutual respect there. And I was available, and he asked if I'd be willing to come to Ames, and I said, sure. And so, again, Paulette she made it up to every home game. So she flew back and forth. So we did the commuting thing again, which wasn't ideal, but for one season we could do it. And then, just really kind of afterwards, really after the season, really kind of prayed about it a lot and talked with Paulette and we just really, I didn't want to move my family anymore. We've got a great spot here in Palm Coast. We're happy. And I had this opportunity come along with BSN in a role as a business development role. And I'm able to piggyback that on top of my pension. So life is good. The NFL pension's great, but you cannot be employed in the sport of football. So right now, even if, it would take a lot to get me out of the situation that I'm in right now, we're pretty happy.
All right, so now that we've gotten through all the stops, which is not a big deal, I'll tell you, I like it because after all, this is a one-time shot, folks. If you want to see Coach Bono's stops, then you must listen to this show over and over because here's the deal, okay? I got writer's cramp jotting these things down, okay? I'm telling you, my hand, okay, got a workout. And I got to ask you, what mover helped you with all these stops? How did you move around from place to place?
I get hives when I talk about movers.
You do. I can only imagine. I can only imagine.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even begin to ask you which one because you were all over the place.
Yeah.
So.
I don't know that I could recommend a moving company. They try, they do, fortunately, in the NFL, most of the time the clubs, cover your entire move, because otherwise you'd go broke. You really would.
Especially when you move twice in 1 year.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. You ever have to deal with storage units, or did you at all?
We kind of avoided that, but I tell you what, I think. Oh man, I think the house that we're in right now. Yeah. I'm just doing like a 1, 2, 3. I think this is the 8th house that Paulette and I have purchased together.
Wow.
That's not counting rentals. So I don't know. I think we could probably open up our own real estate brokerage, and we'd at least know how to price stuff. And we've done it enough times, so that I've got I learned all the do's and don'ts of buying and selling the hard way.
Yeah, that's probably an understatement. Okay, so I have to ask you this question. Well, being in college, first of all, what are your thoughts about the transfer portal?
I think it's good. I think it's a little bit out of control. I think that they just passed some legislation that I think is gonna help that, in terms of like just narrowing down the windows. But I mean, ultimately, I think that players should be able to move if they're not happy. But I think what you're seeing, is you're seeing how transactional college football has become because of the transfer portal and now NIL. It's becoming more and more transactional where, I think, my one of the big reasons I got into coaching was because, the people that I looked up to the most growing up were my coaches. Those were the people that encouraged me, the men that encouraged me. They gave me, I had a great role model at home and my dad, but they were also strong role models. They were honest with me. They made me, held me accountable. They taught, learned how to handle success and adversity. And, I think the game just did so much for me in terms of helping me develop as a man that I felt that I wanted to pass that on. And so, the player relationship, the mentoring aspect of football was a big part of why I wanted to coach. I wanted to, I wanted to be that I wanted to be that person for someone else. And, I know someone's going to ask what's the difference between college and the NFL, and which one's better, or which one do you like? I think they're both great. I think in college football, you do have the opportunity to make a bigger impact on a young man's life. And I think we're losing a little bit of that because of the transfer portal and maybe NIL and those type of things.
Well, there you go, Don DeRubis. All right, go ahead, Jeremy.
The transfer portal and NIL are right on the cusp of destroying the archaic nonsense that is college football in a good way. But it's also done some damage to some smaller schools. So I see both sides of that. But the reason why the NIL was put in, and I'm going to stress this, is because they lost all that money from EA Sports because they didn't want to share it with the kids from those video games for the college football and college baseball games. Those are due to come back now within a year or two. So when that happens, that money is going to go into a trust fund to each kid's image and likeness that they get upon graduation.
Yep.
Okay,
I'm all for that.
Yeah, and I think the NIL, the way it's written, I think it's a good thing. I do. I think that, but again, whenever there's gray area, you're gonna find people that are gonna try to work in the gray to bend the rules, or skirt it. And so, unfortunately, that's what's happening. I mean, some of the dollar figures and stuff that are getting thrown around for somebody, some of these kids who haven't even played yet. It's mind-boggling. It really is. And again, I mean, there's got to be a happy medium. It's got to be done the right way. I think that, I think honestly, some people, they're not cheating because it's not illegal. But I mean, when your whole drive to me, we should stop giving athletic scholarships. If you're going to pay, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and save them. Don't make the schools waste the money on the scholarships. Just pay them and let them pay their own way for school.
I've said that for years. I've said it for about 10 years. DC 8091 for my the college kids generate millions upon millions of dollars for these schools programs, and they deserve their cut.
I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next one. Hold on. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, this is a buddy from my channel. The transfer portal sucks except for kickers.
All right, I want to get to a couple of interesting points. Those are pretty good. All right, Coach, I'm going to drop a couple names out there for you, okay?
Right.
Mike Sherman, Tony Sperano, what do they mean to
you? Very, like, Mike Sherman might be the most principled person I've ever met. I mean, like, just you talk about somebody who, like, walks the walk. I mean, Mike Sherman walked the walk. I mean, maybe probably the most underrated head coach that I worked for, because he was a great head coach and great man to work for. He was a tremendous mentor to me. Man, when I was preparing for my interviews, to interview for the Central Michigan job, Coach Sherman spent hours with me, because he had done it. He'd been a head coach at the Green Bay, and then he went back and was a head coach at Texas A&M. And I knew a lot of those questions were going to be, you've been in the NFL for 16 years. Now you're coming back to college. How do you prepare for that? What are the differences? And so, Coach Sherman actually, gave me a lot of really good advice in terms of navigating that. Tony Sperano, God rest his soul. Just, we lost him too early. Just a phenomenal man. Great leader. Really, really had a great command of the team. His pulse, finger on the pulse of the team, and probably didn't get as much credit as he deserved as a head coach because we were all underneath the Bill Parcells of the, umbrella. But that, that was Tony's team. You know, Tony coached the team and did a really good job with it.
And you already mentioned Sean Payton. So what's it feel like to be a Super Bowl champ?
It feels great. You know, it's like almost like you get that, you know, I think you have a monkey on your back, you know, until you win one. And then, you know, but then it's like, okay, you want that again. You know, it's like you want to feel that again. And so it is like a drug. But there's, you know, to be able to say that, you know, you were a world champion, there are very few people that get to walk around and say that.
Yeah, you did it with Matt Stafford, and you also did it with a kid here from Deerfield Beach named Brandon Powell as well. Brandon Powell's a great kid. I had a chance to meet him a couple times. So let's talk about Stafford, Brandon Powell.
BP, you know, we had him in camp in Detroit, actually. He didn't make our team. You know, I was just really happy to see him get a break and stay and you know, and contribute and have a great year and win the Super Bowl.
Okay, a couple more questions. I'm going to turn over to George and Jeremy. First of all, okay, what stop was your most rewarding?
Oh, man. Again, you know, not to dodge a question, but I'd say they're all rewarding in one way or another because, again, we're talking about people. It's not the places, it's the people, you know, people that you get to share with and, you know, the people that you help develop and then the people that help develop you, right? You know, the people that you know, that you're teaching and mentoring, but, you know, you're also always learning and evolving yourself. And so, you know, I've just been very fortunate to be around a lot of really, really good football minds, but also good people.
Well, it's a fair answer. I have no problem with that at all. I mean, the reality is there's a lot of people, Coach, influencing your life regardless of where they're at.
Yeah, no matter what you do, right?
Yeah, right. It just looks like your victory tour is a little bit more extensive than a lot of people. That's all. I'm just kidding with you, but you know what I mean. I mean, you know. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about something that we alluded to earlier. How did you like playing in Paw Paw?
Man, for me, it was awesome. You know, it was high school football in Michigan. You know, one of the Texas, Florida, Michigan, Pennsylvania,
in Georgia,
Ohio. Yeah, I mean, they're great football states. If you're playing high school football in one of those states, pretty good football.
All right, so tell me the coach that had the most influence on you.
My college coach, Herb Dramedy.
Okay.
You know, Coach Dramedy, just because, you know, he was always there for me. Really, you know, continues to mentor me this day. You know, was fortunate enough to be around him. Even, you know, the last. If you ask me what I miss the most about being the head coach at Central Michigan, the thing that I miss the most is I don't get to see Coach Dramedy as often now. You know, where as a head coach, I saw him, you know, every week or, you know, several times a week. And, you know, he'd come in and he'd sit in my office and we'd talk about things. And, you know, that relationship of player coach never changed for me, you know, even after I was the head coach. So without a doubt, it's Coach Dramedy.
All right, so let's go back. You said you collected your NFL pension and then enabled you to get this current position at BSN Athletic Apparel. Tell me what it's like to not only get your NFL pension, knowing that you paid your dues to do it. Now you're more of a settled down lifestyle in our state with no state income tax.
It's weird.
How nice life now, knowing you got the pension, and now you're working for BSN.
It's weird. I'm still adjusting to life after football, and I think my wife's adjusting to life after football because, you know, for the last 25 years that we've been together, you know, 7 months out of the year or 8 months out of the year, I'm working 7 days a week, you know, with no breaks. And a lot of those days are, you know, 14, 16, 18-hour days. And now I'm home every day, you know, so it's like I just got to learn how to stay the heck out of the way because this is her castle. It's her domain. And so No, but all kidding aside, it's nice. It's nice to be able. You get used to the grind in coaching. The day in, day out. It's never boring. It's hard to find that same. It's hard to find that in like everyday life, regular life. But luckily, I'm on the water. I've got kayaks, I got paddle boards, I got surfboards, I got a pool, I got a boat. So I've got, we've got some other things that we can do to occupy our time. I love to grill out, so I probably gained about 10 pounds since I quit coaching. But,
well, you know what? I'm about to get a few gray hairs because of Don DeRubis. So you know what? I got to put these comments up, and I'm going back to back with them. All right. Let's initially talk about the NIL. Okay. Jeremy, read it, and then and Coach, you're going to love the next one. And if DeRubis plays his cards right, and yes, DeRubis, if you play your cards right, then I'll mention this on the next, after we get done here. So go ahead, Jeremy.
NIL also saved Alabama from what should have been the harshest sanctioning since the SMU death penalty. He's not wrong.
I don't know. What do you think, Coach?
No comment.
Yeah, right. No, that's smart. All right. Well, I'll let you comment on this one, though. All right. This is one here where all right, Dom DeRubis, go ahead. Jeremy, I want you to translate this whole situation and scenario.
Scott Morganroth, if you don't get John back on for an episode of Fire Up Chips, you would be remiss. And he puts a laughy cat face because he's a cat guy.
Yeah, okay. Well, hey, John, is it safe to say we're going to have a lot of fun doing more of these broadcasts or what?
Sure, absolutely. Anytime. I'm game anytime.
Oh, yeah. There you go, Dom. Okay. So stay tuned. John is anything but a one and done. All right. With that said, I'm going to turn over to Jeremy, George. And, you guys have been very patient. So go ahead, Jeremy. You can throw a few questions and George Eichhorn can do. And by the way, just so you know, Coach, okay, George actually is an author and he's going to tell you a little bit about it in a little bit.
I'm gonna send Jeremy one of these bad
boys. Yes, I'll take one. That being said, Coach, so you got to coach many players, but while you were head coach at Central Michigan, tell me what it was like working with Cooper Rush.
Cooper's phenomenal. Cooper is like a coach on the field. Just an outstanding person, outstanding player, and just really, really, really proud of him. Really happy for him, the success that he's had. It hasn't been easy. I mean, he's undrafted, right? He's an undrafted guy, and he's going into his, 6th year in the league. That's hard to do. That's really hard to do, especially at that position. So, and when he's gotten his opportunities, man, he's done what those of us who know him knew he would do. It wasn't, people ask me, am I surprised? No, I'm not. I'm not surprised at all because I just know how intelligent he is. I know his skill set, and I know how hard he works, and he's just doing the things that he's always done. He's got a great process, tremendous work ethic, and just really, really proud of Coop. And not only is he a great player, he's got a young family, doing a great job as a husband and a dad too. And those are really important things.
I love this one. Cooper Rush costs a lot less per win than Rain Dakota.
George, you're getting all poor money, George. All right, well, that's all right, George.
George, it's your turn. Go ahead.
Go ahead, George.
Coach, a lot is said about coaching trees. Okay, Mike Shula's coaching tree, Bill Parcells' coaching tree, and a fellow that I think gets kicked in the butt always, and a good man and a Hall of Famer, Bill Belichick. I want to ask you about that. What is that true about coaching trees and some not being good and some not? And I know it's hard for you to comment. You've got so many coaches that you work with.
You would
Belichick gets a terrible shake.
Yeah, well, you would say Bill Belichick's off of, he's part of that Bill Parcells tree,
Yes.
right? That's who brought. I mean, he coached for Parcells. Tom Coughlin's on the Parcells tree. Sean Payton's on the Bill Parcells tree. Tony Sperano was on the Bill Parcells tree. Mike Sherman was on the Mike Holmgren tree. Which would be the Bill Walsh tree, right? Yeah. So, I mean, they're real, right? They're real because, the thing that you can't manufacture in any business is experience, and you prepare and you study and you work and that's why opportunity is so precious, right? Because that's the only way you get experience is by someone deems you worthy of an opportunity and gives you that gift, and then you try your best not to screw it up. And
boy,
but man, you could make an argument that that Belichick's probably eclipsed Parcells now, in terms of, but I would think that Bill would probably, Coach Belichick would probably give a lot of credit to Bill Parcells.
All right, this one cracks me up. I have no
George, or was that a word salad?
All right, I got to put this up, Coach.
Bill Vogel says, I'm on Scott's coaching tree. He's my mentor, is what he follows up with.
Yeah.
And then,
God bless Vogel.
Yeah.
He was a work in progress in the beginning, but this guy has come a long way, Coach. I'm telling you. He is. I've got a lot of guys in my tree, but Will Vogel's progressing pretty quick. All right. And now here's another one here from Tom. Tom DeRubis has got one of the most unbelievable sense of humor I've ever seen. Go ahead.
Belichick's coaching tree does not exist. It's a few broken twigs. Proximity to greatness does not equal greatness. Ask Patricia.
Listen, Coach, let me tell you something here. Here's the rule. You don't have to come on everything. If you decide to laugh, it's okay, because you know what? This is what pays the bills, and we got people like this in here talking about it, and it means
it's all good. I doubt that Bill cares.
Yeah.
Hey, Coach, I'll tell you what. You want to know how that guy found me over there, Scott? I commented on his Inside the Pigskin one night, and they brought up Matt Patricia, and I've called him that since day one with that whole New York Jet Monday Night Football home opener fiasco, and he said, I got to talk to this guy. He kept saying it the whole show because I kept giving good comments.
Yeah, well, not only that, though. You want to know something, Coach? You talk about coaching trees. I won't mention the name of the network, but I got removed from a group because the guy that was running it thought I was going to take all of his talents, and I committed grand larceny, snapping up smoke in here, and that was the end of my time in the group. So you know what? No disrespect to that organization. There aren't many people that would crack our lineup anyway, but this guy here, Ballrick, he not only cracked it, he smashed it open. But, I want personality, charisma, that kind of stuff. You've dealt with how many different personalities, coaches, you've been around. Come on, really.
A lot of them.
That's my point. Thanks. The one thing you have to learn, though, Coach, GMTA, you know what that stands for?
No.
Great minds think alike.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so that'll be one of the things I bring up from time to time. Also, on our early edition of Inside the Pigskin, okay, Mel Farr Jr. You ever heard of Mel Farr Sr.?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, well, his son, Mel Farr Jr. is my co-host. So I told Mel that I'm bringing you on, and you and Mel are going to be on some shows together, buddy. I got news for you. He's looking forward to it. I mean, hey, this is what it's all about. We building relationships in and out of the organization. We come back, we have fun. If people can't have fun interacting with each other, I've done a horrible job selecting the talent. So, George, okay, you talked about coaching tree. I'm sure you got another question or two lined up.
Well, the other one I wanted to ask you about, Coach, is the decision to send a team to a bowl game at Central Michigan. We've got this bowl in Detroit, the Motor City Bowl. It's had different names over the years. And I know how excited they are here when Central Michigan or even Western, is picked to play in Detroit. But from a coaching standpoint and from a athletic standpoint, would the team be better off trying to go to an out-of-town bowl game, or are they very happy when, let's say, Detroit would pick them for the bowl at Ford Field?
Well, to me, it was a win-win. And I'll say this, okay? I called it Maconomics. All right. The Mid-American Conference doesn't have the money that the Big Ten has or the SEC. So, financially, it's a much better deal to take a bus down to Detroit than it does to charter a plane and go somewhere else and play. Not only that is, the majority of our players were from the state of Michigan. And so playing a bowl game in Detroit was like adding another home game for us. That was my first year, so I didn't have a lot to compare it to. But looking back, the Quick Lane Bowl, which it was when we went, those people did a fantastic job with everything. Just the accommodations, where we stayed, the activities. You wouldn't think there's that many great things. There was a ton of activities we did, through the bowl game that, the kids had a blast. Their families could all afford to go there and be at the game. We had a great turnout for the game. We sold a bunch of tickets.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd like to, everybody wants to go to some exotic, location, but you're in Detroit, but you're also getting to play in the dome. You're playing indoors, a controlled environment. It's, I really, for Central Michigan, someone said, you're going to go to bowl games the next 5 years. I guarantee you can go to a bowl game, but you're going to have to go to the Quick Lane Bowl. I would take that deal and do backflips. I'd be ecstatic for it. It was a great experience, for our team.
Well, let me tell you this, Coach. George and I had an opportunity to attend a Central Michigan Florida Atlantic University bowl game there, and it was pretty neat. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I was covering FAU, so I felt like a visitor that day. But I have to, you know what it's like. Your allegiances are to the one that.
Sure.
So I have to tell you,
signing that check.
What's that?
Your allegiance is to whoever signs that check.
Exactly. And the amazing part about that situation, I believe that was a game when I covered the game. FAU's basketball team took on Kentucky, so I took out that game and then the FAU Kentucky game in Lexington in back-to-back days. FAU's plane got stuck on the runway and all that fog, and I had to stop at a rest area. Luckily, I was able to make it back to Lexington and back. It's safe to say one of my days in Detroit, I slept the whole day. But you're right. I mean, it felt weird for me, though, being a road guy with Florida Atlantic, so I know where my allegiances were with the Owls. In my home state. I mean, and George was right there with me, right, George?
Yep.
I mean, wasn't it pretty crazy or what?
Yeah, I remember you went to the basketball game afterwards on the way back. Yeah. But it was a great event. It was a great event. And you're right, Coach. They do a real nice job here in Detroit with the Quick Lane Ball.
They did a phenomenal job. Phenomenal.
All right, so let's go a little bit more in the chat room. I know, Coach, we're keeping a little bit longer, but hey, we're on a roll with these people. And they pay our bills, so we got to go out there. Dom DeRubis. All right, let's see. What's he talking about now? It's a great idea to get directional school from a bowl game wherever possible. I guess you concur with that, right?
Sure.
Okay. All right, Dom, we got that one. Now he talks about his time when he went in 1997 when they had the inaugural Motor City Bowl, 97 Marshall and Randy Miss.
Wow.
Randy Moss.
He wants to say he's a little on the sarcastic side, so he knows what he's doing versus Deuce McAllister. Okay, so as you get to know Dom DeRubis, the one thing about him is he's a very sarcastic but entertaining individual. All right, let's see what else we got up here. All right, let's see. All right, here's one here that will make a lot of people laugh. Sorry, Coach, it is what it is, man. We should have hired Patricia instead of Caldwell, just so the Quintricia era would be further in the rear view. I'm not sure how to make out on that one, Jeremy.
I do. I know exactly what he's talking about because W.G. Brady wrote an article in 2018 about the assistant coach that no one was interviewing, and it was Dan Campbell, and all the reasons why he'd have been a good coach for Detroit in 2018. Now, this guy waits till they hire him in 2020, turns around and flips the script, reverses it, and says that's why they shouldn't have hired Caldwell, for still writing for ESPN at the same time.
All right, that to me is like a foreign language.
I will say this though, I think Jim Caldwell's like one of the finest people that I've ever had the privilege to be around, and it literally breaks my heart that he's not a head coach. He's a phenomenal person. And
Caldwell?
Jim Caldwell.
Oh, yeah.
Coach Caldwell's like, he was so good to me. When I got the Central job, I don't know, I think he was almost as excited as I was, because it was something we had talked about. You know, we had, he met with every coach on the staff. What are your goals? What are your, where do you see yourself 5 years from now, 10 years from now? I'd never had another NFL head coach that I worked with, do that, and so for that reason, Coach Caldwell is still a great mentor to me. But he is, you talk about, minority coaches getting a shot. I mean, I'm disappointed that Jim Caldwell hasn't gotten another opportunity after Detroit, because in hindsight, he did a pretty damn good job.
I agree.
I don't think
no argument here.
It's not like here either.
One of the best regular season coaches we ever had.
Hey, listen, Coach, you got a 4-0 vote on this one. So, what is it? Majority unanimous? I don't know what the word is for 4-0. What is it?
Yeah.
But yeah, I do remember the last year we made the playoffs, and I'm not saying it was all his fault, but due to some poor play calling, that we had to have Matt Stafford bail us out with 8 comeback wins.
Yeah, right.
Out of 9.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, you talk about Stafford real quickly, Coach, but let's go back to a Will Vogel comment. Go ahead, read this one too, Jeremy.
Coach, you're on a great program with some amazing gentlemen who are all mentors to me. Well, thank you, Will.
Yeah, that was really nice. So again, we're in a situation where I should have renamed it mentors over mentors, but all right. Let's go back to Matthew Stafford for a moment. What was he like, Coach Bono? Okay, overall, did he you give him any advice or anything, or what?
No, don't have to. Tough, all right, smart, tremendous teammate. Like the guys in the locker room love Matt Stafford because Matt Stafford's easy to love. He's he doesn't have an ego. He treats everybody the same. In Detroit, he would always have he'd have a couple events. He'd have like a poker night at his house after training camp, and he'd invite all the players over. And I mean, he was the house. And then his Halloween parties, I think, were pretty famous or infamous, but it didn't matter if a player had just joined the team that week and was on the practice squad. Matt was going to make sure that, if he had something going on, that player was going to get over there, and that he was going to be welcome, just like, somebody that he had played with for the last 6 years.
Wow.
Matt's he's a winner. He really is. And I just always admired his toughness, his physical toughness, his ability to play through pain, which he did quite a bit, maybe more so than he let on, and more than a lot of people would know.
Yeah, his wife Kelly seems like a pretty nice lady too, doesn't she?
She's a little outspoken for me.
I was just gonna say she has a bigger mouth than Matt does.
Did you get to know? But did you get to know Kelly at all?
Just casually, just hello and stuff. She was always very gracious to me and my wife and I. So,
okay, that's all right. Hey, listen, you know what, Coach? I got news for you. We always know our first show's going to be a little bit longer than most because, after all, Coach, it's your coming out party.
That being said, I wanted to go back because we did miss one comment from Dom that he asked him.
Go ahead.
When you were coaching here that first time between Schwartz and Caldwell, wasn't that the same year we had Jeremy Ross returning kick?
Yes. Yeah, I love Jeremy. Yep.
And I remember he went to the AAF for a minute too, didn't he? That little league.
So.
Yeah, he was playing for the team that was winning it all because he was returning kicks for them too.
Yeah.
What league did you say?
That AAF, the one that broke up after 5 games.
Oh, I thought you meant Arena Football League when you said
No, AAF, American Allegiance Football.
Oh, I don't even remember it. Don't even remember it.
Hey, Coach, it's funny how he brings it up, though. And let's go to Don's comment, but Jeremy brings up an interesting point, okay? Oh, go ahead. Why don't you go ahead and read that, Jeremy? Because now you got me intrigued about something. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Yep. Matt Stafford should have been the next Brett Favre or John Elway, but all the missteps by the front office, constant turnover with coordinators, minimized him. He's absolutely right. In his tenure, I think he had 10 different offensive coordinators and 4 different coaches. Yeah, I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot for a quarterback to overcome.
Mm-hmm. It
and
is.
One of those was the ghost of Vince Lombardi, his kid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think that was Vince Lombardi getting in his head from behind the grave, saying, "Sabotage this guy."
It was funny. All right, so now Jeremy brings up the AAF, but now we have the USFL, the XFL, and the Canadian Football League. Somewhere along the lines here, I don't know if you ever did anything with the Canadian Football League, but now there's more leagues popping up, but you're not really associated with any of these other leagues outside the NFL and colleges.
No, I mean, I had my opportunities to go to the XFL and the USFL, but it wasn't the right opportunity or the right situation for myself and my family. And so I had to politely, decline. But I mean, I think it's great because, it just gives more players an opportunity to play. It's another proving ground. And the same thing with, with a lot of the coaches. One of my guys that I really care about, Reggie Barlow, is the head coach for the DC Defenders in the XFL. Reggie's done a great job, and I coached Reggie as a player in Jacksonville. He was our punt and kick returner, and then I've always stayed in touch with him, and been a bit of a mentor to him as he kind of transitioned from playing into coaching, and so just really happy for a guy that's really kind of been bouncing around at the HBC level, but whom I've always thought was a really good coach and deserved a shot. And I was just really happy to see him get a job in the XFL as a head coach and watch him do really well, which I knew he would. And, I'm anxious and excited to see what's in his future, down the road, because I just really think a lot of Reggie as a human being and also as a coach.
Well, when you talk about your wife not wanting to go to cold climates, could you ever have imagined her in the Canadian Football League?
No. No.
I had to mention that. I won't even ask you what that game's about. We'll save it for later. But Don DeRubis, well, you know what? I have to put this one up too. Keep the show going as long as these things go, Coach Sean. At least you're retired. I don't have to feel too bad about a bedtime, I hope. Okay, but here you go, Jeremy.
Stafford probably won't up playing long enough to pass Marino's career numbers, but he would have easily, and he's got a ring, but he'll never get mentioned in the same breath with Marino.
Marino, how many head coaches did he have? 2?
Yeah.
Shula and Jimmy Johnson.
Right.
Pretty good.
All right, so let me ask you a question about this. I'm glad Don brought it up. I've always wondered about this, and now I think you're the right guy to do it. Okay. We all know that Don Shula, and I worked with him actually, Coach. I worked with the Lions, the Jaguars, and the Dolphins back in the early 80s, okay? Mm-hmm. And I got to know Coach Shula a little bit. He taught me some things. Coaches, what's so good about coaches, too, that people don't understand is just because we're writers doesn't mean us younger guys can't pick their brain about what it's like to be successful. And I've done that a lot of times because we're human beings. Coaches are designed to really mentor and give advice. I don't care if you're playing it or not. Shula was good about that. But do you think toward the end, okay, that Marino might have been a little bit too selfish about numbers when Jimmy Johnson tried to go out there and have a balanced running attack because he knew the ticket to winning a Super Bowl as he did a couple of times with the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, let's face the reality. Dan Marino had a lot of good receivers. He really, really did. Mark Duper, Mark Clayton, and the list goes on, and Nat Moore. And I was down there for a lot of that. But then Jimmy Johnson, there's a guy that likes to balance. So what are your thoughts about the way Marino handled things, his approach? And, of course, Tom mentioned, doesn't have a Super Bowl ring.
Man, I've had too many concussions, and it was too long ago. I don't remember any of that shit, Scott.
Oh, you know what? I wish I had a few concussions so I didn't have to memorize it because I have to deal with it in our neck of the woods. Okay. But you know what? No, I'm not asking it to downplay.
I really couldn't. I don't feel like I can't comment on that. I don't know. I
know. And I can appreciate that, but is it common or not common? Okay. Let's take Marino out of the question, where sometimes quarterbacks sacrifice numbers and not for the actual balance attack, and that may hinder their ability to get Super Bowl. We'll take Marino out of the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Man, to me, it's like I wouldn't say I haven't been many. I've been fortunate. I've been around some good ones, like Favre,
Right.
Mark Brunell, Drew Brees, Chad Pennington, Matt Stafford.
Right.
Shoot, man.
For us.
Yeah. For us.
I had to go there.
Great players want to win. I mean, that's I think the frustration that you see when most players come out, and a lot of times it gets labeled as selfishness, or it's on teams that aren't winning, and those players feel like maybe they're not being utilized or they're not getting opportunities because they want to win.
Right.
Rarely, I would say, the guys that are doing it to try to, those guys, we're not talking about those guys typically, right, because they don't last very long. They just, if someone's that flawed in their character and they're eventually, when the talent levels off, or your tolerance for that as a coach or as an organization, is very little, unless it's like an example of a player whose talent is just above and beyond. I can honestly say that because of the head coaches that I worked for, right, I was not exposed to very much of that stuff at all, because Tom Coughlin, Mike Sherman, I'll go right down the line, Sean Payton, those guys are all coming, from backgrounds where they just don't tolerate it. It's not, I mean, Sean, every one of those guys that I just mentioned, they would find whoever the player was, they didn't care, was going to get fined if they were late or something like that. And they always got fined the maximum. And the reason they were fined the maximum is, they didn't want any gray area. And there was no, I remember, Sean Payton would start every team meeting with order of the day, and he would read off the fines if there were any that day. And it wasn't in any way to berate the player. It was like telling you what was for lunch in the cafeteria that day. Okay. So, I mean, Drew Brees, missed meal, $3,000. All right, today's emphasis is a red zone. We've got to do a great job. I mean, it was that quick. But, man, you're sitting in that room and you're trying to make the roster, and you just heard that Drew Brees got fined. You better not miss. I better not be late. If he's going to find that guy, then I better make sure that I'm there. I mean, Mike Sherman, if someone was late for a meeting and you didn't turn it in, you might get fired.
Wow.
You might get fired.
All right. What we're going to do is we're We're going to go ahead and put 3 more of Dom's comments. We're going to wrap it up tonight. Coach, thank you very much for being so generous of your time tonight. I'm sure that a lot of our shows going forward won't be nearly this long, but I view this as your first opportunity to get out and people get to know you. And obviously, like you mentioned, we're looking forward to have you on more podcasts as time goes on. So we're just going to mention them real quickly, and then we're going to call it a night. So, all right, here, Dan Marino's the most overrated fourth Hall of Fame quarterback of all time. So you name it, Bradshaw and Aikman. I don't know what Kool-Aid you're drinking there. I don't know.
I know what exactly he's talking about. Look at their regular season total career numbers. And regular season, they weren't that big, flashy of numbers that you expect from Hall of Fame QBs.
Okay, well, now we have Jeremy B. as Dom DeRubis automatic translator. Coach, you can react any way you want to, all right? Because you're giving everybody out here a great football education, and that's really important. Thanks, Coach. A lot of people, I guarantee, have stayed in here long enough because they want to learn. Go ahead.
However, selfish Marino may have been about his numbers. Aaron Rodgers the last few years far trumps that.
Don, you don't have any opinions, I can tell you that.
No kidding.
The fact that Favre and Rodgers only have 2 rings between them is simultaneously sad, hilarious, and pathetic.
All right, well, there you go. You definitely have run across one of the most opinionated guys. But Dom, it's okay. I mean, he's good people.
Keep it coming, Dom.
Hey, George, if you have to leave, Coach is here just to hang in there. No, I'm just kidding with you because you only have a book. If you want to leave without promoting the book, that's entirely up to you, George, okay? But, we will wrap it up anyways at some point. And, of course, thanks for the kind words. Oh, what a blast, Coach. You having a good time tonight or what?
I've had a blast. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed it. George.
Oh, yeah.
Jeremy,
all right,
pleasure meeting you, gentlemen.
So with that said, let me go over a couple more things real quick here locally. Just so you know, the audio version of the Sports Exchange can be heard on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcasts. Please hit the red subscribe button on YouTube, South Florida Tribune. We're striving for 1,000 subscribers. Please also comment, like, and share the broadcast. Want to be a guest? Send topic ideas to southfloridatribune@gmail.com. And you can also participate in the chat room. Boy, if you're anything like Dom DeRubis, you got to get in here quick because we're bringing a lot of people in. If you want to advertise cost efficiently, call me at 954-304-4941. You can also contact me on Twitter at Tribune South as well. We are live on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. And if you wonder why my voice is getting hoarse, well, who cares? I'm enjoying every last bit. All right, Don, you want more last thing? All right, there you go. I think Coach can live with this one. Not too controversial, right?
Well, last thing, go Lions. And Lion King from my channel comes in and says, I heard we passed on Marino.
Well, so did a lot of other teams. So, Lion King, you're right. And that's why Miami landed.
The worst one was the one that Dom mentioned earlier, is that we passed on Randy Moss for Terry Fair. That worked out great, didn't it?
Well, yeah. All right. Well, we'll leave it at that because we know George Eichhorn's approaching his bedtime.
Yes.
So should we let you promote your book first, George? You want to wait till the very end?
We can promote it. It's a book I wrote, Coach, called Detroit Sports Broadcasters on the Air. A couple of your buddies are in there, Coach. Okay, I'll give you some names: Mark Champion, Frank Beckman, Jim Brandstatter, Dan Miller. Nice. I go back to Van Patrick and Bob Reynolds, 2 of the great announcers that did Lions football forward down the field with these guys. And the book is available. There's a link at the end of my column on the Motor City Tribune page for the book. But I had a lot of fun doing that and going back in the football days, those old broadcasters, man.
I bet you did. That sounds awesome.
It is. It was a lot of fun. And Scott's in the book too, but not with football. He's in for tennis and boxing.
Yeah, Muhammad Ali and Jimmy Connors, Coach. What do you think?
Wow.
Don't worry. When we get together in Palm Coast and Daytona, wherever you want to meet, I got a good picture list to show you, Coach. Don't worry. Hey, I got this guy in Florida. I'm gonna have him and I are gonna be old buddies up on the, what do we call ourselves? The Treasure Coast? Is that what we call ourselves, Coach?
Yeah, Space Coast.
Oh yeah, well whatever, Space Coast.
Whatever. Yeah, Treasure Coast. I don't. Yeah, because St. Augustine, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I guess. I don't even know. I mean, I don't know. All I know is we're off the Atlantic Ocean, whatever else coast you want to call it. It is what it is. All right, Jeremy, go ahead.
Well, you can find me on the SouthFloridaTribune.com, right underneath George Eichhorn there for the Motor City Tribune, where I write about, lo and behold, the Detroit Lions. And then you can also find me right here on this channel any day of the week that Scott needs me. It was twice tonight. He may even need me tomorrow and the next day too. I don't know, but I'll do it. Then you can find me on my YouTube channel, which is Kneecap Biting with Smoking Jeremy B. You can also find me on Facebook at Motor City Kneecap Biters, and you can find me on Twitter at Smoking Jeremy B.
Well, Coach, guess what? We put it all out there. You want to mention anything else about where they can locate you? You just want to be retired out in?
I am proud to say that I am on 0 forms of social media. That's by choice.
Okay.
Other than LinkedIn, because for professional reasons. But shoot, find me on this show.
Yeah, well, you know what? I got news for you. I'm glad you brought that up, though, Coach. That's how I did contact Coach Bono, anyways, on LinkedIn as well. And obviously, and you know what? Well, let's put it this way. You're on the Sports Exchange. You're going to be on Inside the Pigskin. We're going to put you everywhere. Fire up Michigan for a hot minute. You got a taste of what you're in for. Can you handle it, Coach?
Oh, yeah. It was fun.
And one last thing I want to do, special shout out to Candy Ebling, does an unbelievable job keeping everything up there. And our website's www.southfloridatribune.com. So with that said, I hope you've enjoyed this broadcast with Coach Bono, his first act. And obviously we're looking for a lot more of them. You talk about a hit and a guy who's a traveling man. I can tell you one thing that we do have to look forward to, though, Coach, and I mentioned this at the top of the show. You and I will do a one-on-one interview soon enough about your being a cancer survivor. That's something I want to do. I feel it's something we need to do, and we'll have a lot more football talk, obviously a little bit shorter with different guests, but we just want to make sure that as we went longer a little bit this first time, that we wanted everybody to know who John Bonamego is, and so they had a good background so they know who we're going to be talking about down the line. So, Coach, like I said, you know what? You have a new team, and we're proud as heck to have you on it. Really.
Thank you for having me, gentlemen. I really appreciate it, and it's been an honor and a privilege.
Well, that's great, and I'm looking forward to seeing you up in Palm Coast and Daytona Beach, partner. We got a lot of projects to do. So, on behalf of George Eichhorn, Coach Bono, and Smoking Jeremy B, my name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth Coach. Okay, just so you know. Thank you for joining us on this edition of the Sports Exchange, and we will catch you the next time, everybody. Thank you very much for everybody that went out there and participated in the chat room. As Dick Vitale would say, you're awesome, baby. Catch you the next time.